But we are officially live on both Facebook and YouTube. And I hope that my audio is coming in. So let me know if it's not. I think the audio check worked out, although this is a little bit different approach than we normally take. So that is, first of all, the most important thing we got to do right now is a little bit of an introduction, because you may be coming back to this. This is the 5th week of Accountability Immersion Training. And so if you're visiting these live streams and you're back for more, then welcome back. That's awesome. And that's the real purpose I'm doing these. And at the same time, if you've never seen one of these before, I'm doing this live stream as a part of a Master Coach University training, a training that we provide for those that are going through an advanced certification of ours around accountability coaching specifically. And these trainings, these very advanced trainings that happen only within the mastery program, the basic program within Master Coach University, are called immersion trainings because they are multiple weeks, anywhere between 8 and 12 weeks of deep immersion within a very specific methodology, or what I like to call a discipline of coaching. And this one, we're working on accountability. So if you missed some of the premise of all of that, check out some of the recent recent videos that we've done. We are actually under a curfew tonight in my county here because of the protests and the riots that are happening right now. So if you're kind of stuck at home for protective purposes, then this is probably the perfect place to be, where we can actually deal with what stops us. But anyway, that's what we're here for, Accountability Immersion Training. We're now in week 5. We're actually right at the end of week 5, but if you're watching this in a replay, it might be the beginning of your week 5. I don't know. But the bottom line is, in week 5, we are going to talk about this here subject: what stops your coaching client? What stops your client? Now, I'm going to start with, and I'm going to come back to this in a second, I promise. I'm going to start with a story. I took a drive a long time ago, and it was at night, probably a night kind of like tonight. Totally dark out, no moon, probably clouds or something. I don't remember exactly, but I'm driving, and I turned off because the person I was going to go to see lived kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And you know how you kind of go farther and farther away from, the city lights and everything. And then you end up turning off onto a side road, and then another side road. And eventually you're on like dirt or gravel, and you realize that you are no longer in paved civilization anymore. Well, so that's pretty much where I was. And so I'm driving down this dark road in my car, and I lose my lights. And I really couldn't see, but I could see like just enough. If you ever notice, like your eyes adjust to the no light conditions, I could see just enough to be able to tell like that I was still on a road, and how to stay on the road. I could barely make out kind of like the edges of the road, if you will. And so I'm kind of trying to navigate along this dirt road because I figure I'm not that far away from my destination. And all of a sudden my car just stops. Now the engine doesn't stop. It feels like the wheels are still turning, but I can tell I'm not actually making any forward momentum anymore, right? And it was kind of a sudden stop, but it was like a soft, like a squishy stop, right? And so, I must have hit something. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I just stopped. And so I said, well, maybe I could just hit the gas a little bit. I started hitting the gas and more and more and more, and it wasn't going anywhere, right? And I was like, well, what's going on? I mean, am I in the mud? Like, what's the problem? And so I like shifted into low gear. That's what you're supposed to do if you're smart and you're like, your wheels are just spinning. You go into a different gear. So I go into low gear, and I kind of try to slowly get myself to go forward. Nothing happens. And then finally I said, you know what if I back up? Maybe I just need some momentum to get through whatever I'm in. So I put it in reverse, and I backed up, and I actually went backwards. Like I was going backwards, and I was like, okay, great. Well, at least I'm not stuck. But for whatever reason, I was probably just young at the time, I just felt confident enough to say, okay, let's just go for it. I'm just going to rev up and get some momentum and just charge forward, and I'll get past whatever quicksand I was stuck in. And so I got some speed. I went a little faster. I revved up the engine, and I went really fast, and boom, I just like a really fast stop. And so finally I just I'm like, okay, should I just give up? Should I just turn around? What should I do? It was really dark out. I couldn't see. I didn't have a clue what was stopping me. So I finally, after like 10 minutes of like checking everything and looking around and trying to figure out if I was off the road somehow, all this kind of weird stuff, this convoluted stuff, I just didn't really want to like get out of the car and actually check. So I finally just said, okay, fine, I'll get out. I'm going to find out what is stopping me. So I got out, and I walk around to the front of the car, and because everything looked fine, everything looked totally normal. And I'm looking, and there's something in front of the car. There's something like big right in front of the car. And I look down, and it's like this big lump of dirt or something. I couldn't tell what it was. And so I get a little closer. And all of a sudden, like I'm like a foot away from whatever this is, and I realize, because I'm just starting to get focus on this thing, that it's like some kind of head. It's like kind of head of something, and I see this nose and kind of like the shape of this head, and I realize I was like rear back, and I realize, oh my gosh, this is a dead cow in the road. I hit a dead cow that was just laying in this road. I hope it was dead. It was dead now. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. And I can't believe that this is what stopped me. I didn't feel like I hit a dead cow. I would never have thought that here out in the middle of nowhere, I'm going to get stopped by a dead cow on the road. Of course, I had no lights. So, I guess you could understand why I didn't see anything in front of me while I hit this dead cow. But finally I realized, this dead cow is not taking up the whole road. Let's just get in, go around it. I can get to where I'm going. And so I did that. I backed up. I went, I turned around. I couldn't really see it, but I could tell where it was. I could see how much road I had available to me on the other side of the road. So I just kind of swerved around it, kept going, made it through, made it to where I needed to go. Figured out how to get my lights back on. Everything just kind of worked out. The reason why I shared that with you is because that's like what your client is going through. That's what they're going through. Whatever it is that they came to you for, they are stopped, and they're, for whatever reason, whether it's because they were afraid to look, or because they just can't see something, the lights aren't on, so to speak, for them, they really don't know, or at least aren't responsible for, what's stopping them. I mean, why is it important to know and to actually deal with what stops your coaching client? Well, think of it this way. Like if there was a brick wall that your client keeps bumping into, right? And you can see it. Like they're like, I want to get over here, and they're running and running. They hit the brick wall and they're hurt. And then they run into it again, and they run into it again. And clearly they're blind to the brick wall. Not necessarily blind completely, but blind to the wall, right? Blind to what's stopping them. Like, what are you like? How's that going to manifest in their life? How's that going to manifest in their results? Well, first of all, I mean, if they're blind to the wall, how are they going to react when you bring up that they keep running into a wall? Like, what do you think they're going to do? What do you think they're going to say? Probably like argue with you. They'll be maybe confused. Like, what are you talking about, wall? I don't understand. What do you mean by that? I mean, there's going to be like confusion and frustration and argument and anger. you're going to get a lot of problems with your client. You can say, look, just walk around here. They'll be like, what are you, crazy? I mean, like, that's where the destination is. I got to go here. And they keep hitting the wall, right? When they don't know what's stopping them, when you can't articulate it to them, when you can't get agreement with them, can't get on the same page with them on what's stopping them, this is what's going to happen. It's just going to be more and more and more of the same. It's going to be more like argument and frustration and confusion and on and on and on. What kind of results are your client going to get if that continues? The short answer is none. Your client will get no results. And it's unfortunate, but sometimes as the coach, and frankly, I mean, even if you're not trained as a coach, it's usually really easy to see what stops someone else. It's like almost impossible for us to see what stops us. That doesn't mean that we haven't seen things that stop us before, but whatever consistently stops us, the reason why it consistently stops us is because we're blind to it, because we don't see it, right? So the things that consistently, let's put that word in, consistently, the things that consistently stops your client, you probably see it, but they don't. That's why it stops them. Because again, if they saw it already, they would have handled it. They would have done something about it. And the same for you in your life or your areas of your business or whatever. You're coaching. What stops you in that area, you don't see it. You're blind to it. That's why it continues to stop you. Does that make sense? If you could see it, if you could see the dead cow on the road, you'd go around it. If you could see there is a brick wall, you do something about it, right? Now, sometimes people will say, well, I know what's stopping me. I'm just not willing to change it. I'm just like, okay, well, consider that that's not really what's stopping you. That what's really stopping you is something else. Now, it might have something to do with that. It might have a relationship with that thing that actually stops you, that you've seen, that you think is the thing that stops you. It's possible. But what's much more likely is that it has nothing to do with that and that you really don't have a clue what's stopping you. That's just the case. And again, our egos will drive us to think that we know, because we'd rather know and be like justified and righteous about it. Like, I'm right about this. I know what I'm talking about. I'm not an idiot. We'd rather feel that, even though we're still stopped and totally going to fail in our result that we're really after, that we really want, than actually be like, oh my gosh, I had no clue that was what was getting in my way all these years. The last 25 years, I've been blah, 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 and I didn't even realize it. Like a lot of people, your client, me and you, a lot of times we'd rather just not know that and be righteous and stroke our own egos and feel comfortable rather than actually know, rather than actually discover what's stopping us. So those of you in Accountability Immersion Training who've been working with me or working with your clients on your step 1 of your accountability coaching process, you know what I'm talking about. You will see your clients, intelligent people, smart people, people that are successful people, but you look at the area that they are accountable for following through on, they're not following through on consistently, and steam will come out of their ears before they actually know what's stopping them, before they're actually responsible for what's stopping them. Like normal, reasonable, rational, that's not a word, rational, just people that are just like got their heads on straight, right? Great, amazing people, successful people, great clients. Still totally irresponsible for or not having a clue about what's stopping them. And you want to see that in yourself too. Why? Not because it's like I was here beat up on you, but like then we can have a little bit of empathy. Like I can have empathy for my client. Like, you know what? Like that's totally me too. I can just help them because I'm not in the boat with them. I'm on the ship that's going to sail by and save them, right? And I got my own stuff that I got to deal with too, right? So anyway, I hope that makes sense. I mean, let me know if it doesn't. If there's any confusion about this, about why we must discover what's stopping our client and we must get on the same page with them. We must help them to get that. If they don't get it, they're dead. And they're just going to end up having more arguments with you. And you're going to think, man, this person's a jerk. They're an idiot. They don't know what they're doing. They're a troublesome client. They're not coachable. I mean, that's the regular one that us coaches like to say, right? It's because it kind of gets us off the hook. It's like, well, they're not coachable. They don't have, 2 ears and a mouth. They can't have a conversation like this. They're not ready to change. All those excuses that all the rational coaches make to feel better about themselves because they actually haven't really done what's necessary, or maybe they just don't know the technique. That's totally understandable, for actually getting their client clear on what's stopping them. So I'll give you one more example. Then we're going to get into some nuts and bolts. Today, we're going to talk about everything, and I'm talking everything that stops your client. We will leave no stone unturned, and it's not really that many things. I mean, believe it or not, it's literally just 6 things that stop your client. And once you know these 6 things, then it's one of those 6 or a combination of those that's stopping your client. And these are things that your client usually will either not see, they won't want to talk about, they won't want to deal with, they're not responsible for it, they can't be honest about it, like some issue there. And look, we can't get into every artful way to run through what we call a step 1, which is where we actually make our client aware of what's stopping them, what the real cause is of them breaking their word, of them not following through on their commitments. I can't cover that all with you. I mean, if you're in accountability immersion training, you just watch the step 1 video, watch the get the flow chart, follow the flow chart, the training around the flow chart and delivering on the flow chart. You're going to know everything you need to do in that step. But I'm going to cover these 6 things here in maybe even more detail than what we covered in that video itself, and talk through some of the finer points of step 1 that maybe we stepped over in that particular training as well. So I'll give you one more example of this, though, as to how detrimental, how debilitating, how destructive not knowing what's stopping you in your life or in your business or in some area that you really want to produce better results is, how antithetical to producing results it is. So about 15 years ago now, easily 15 years ago, I was expanding my business, and I was just starting to learn accountability technology, and I was working with our model for accountability. Her name's Meg Fritton, still a great coach out there. You can get coaching with her today, look her up. And we utilize what she did with me originally as my accountability coach for the structures and strategies that we initially integrated into accountability immersion training, and then eventually built some more elaborate and sophisticated structures around those that are now known as the accountability flow charts. So enough history on that. But she had connections with some amazing other coaches and people that are in the coaching and consulting business. And so I wanted to meet with these individuals to bring them in as partners with my business as well. Because I thought, well, gosh, as a team, we could just like enroll people like crazy and take our whole business to another level. I eventually hired Meg, and Meg worked on our team for many years, but I wanted more. Like, I really wanted to take our business to the next level. So I go out to meet these particular potential partners that I know who they are. They're really high level people, and they really would have taken my business to another level had we partnered. And I was like late to the meeting, and they really were upset about it. And they told me how they weren't going to work with me, and they couldn't work with somebody who was unreliable and all this kind of stuff. And they ended up just like, they backed out, and I did everything I could to try to repair the situation and make them feel better about what we were doing. And, I just like used every conversational trick I knew, because I had been trained by like Tony Robbins, a lot of great salespeople and marketers, and like every manipulation strategy you can imagine. So I'm just like ducking and weaving and trying to figure out, how am I going to get these people to kind of come back around and partner with me and, get aligned with them, and we can overcome these issues. I need their help. That's part of why we want to work together. And none of it worked. And for years after that in my business, I just kept struggling. And I had some up years and some down years, and there's no doubt I made progress over time, but it was pretty slow progress. It was the kind of progress somebody banging their head into a brick wall would have, or who, keeps running into the same dead cow in the road, and they don't even know it's there. And the reason is because I never discovered what had stopped me from just working with those potential partners with a high level of integrity and reliability. I never figured it out. And I was never responsible for it as a result of it, of not knowing what it was, right? Because if I didn't know what it was, like I didn't know the dead cow was in the road, I couldn't drive around it. Didn't know I was running into a brick wall, I couldn't do something about that. I didn't have anything I knew to transform. So those potential partners like never would have been convinced that I was worth working with, because like, he's never going to change. This is the guy we're going to deal with. Let's not waste our time and ruin our reputations by wasting our time with this guy. Never discovered what was stopping me until years later, when I was lucky enough to work with a coach that was highly trained as an accountability coach, one of the top accountability coaches in the world. I worked with him for years, and we just took step by step, stage by stage of learning who I was that was stopping me. Not like the things I blame, not the things I used to excuse myself and cover up, not the manipulation strategy, not the publicity campaign I used to try to get away with that stuff, but actually what was up with me that had me unreliable, who couldn't even make it to a meeting so that we could have a meeting with partners years ago. Years later, this is when I figured this stuff out with his help. And that's when I figured out that I am lazy. Like, my laziness gets in the way of me actually producing results in life and in business. That's when I learned, actually, I think this was years later, but that at some point, let's put it that way, around that time is when I learned how arrogant I was and still am. You know, how arrogant I am that stops me from actually putting in the work that's necessary to go to the next level in an area of my life. Like, just extreme arrogance that it takes for me to like limit myself, right? That sense of like, I'm too good for that. I don't have to do that. You know, somebody else should do that for me, not me. You know, I'm the talent here. You know, somebody else should run this business. Need to get some partner to do that for me, right? Partners that didn't want to work with me probably would have been perfect for that. I learned how bored I got with something that produced results, made money, and helped us make progress, and how I would find something that worked, do an amazing job with it, have it like expand the business, and then stop doing it for years and years because, yeah, it's boring. I'm just going to go do something else. So I'm lazy, I'm arrogant, I'm bored, and here I expect that, you know, people are going to want to like work with me. That's going to attract great business. That's going to expand things. And I'm still lazy. I'm still arrogant. I'm still bored, or I still get bored. I get those ways for sure. Way less than I was at the time, I'm sure, right? But the difference is I'm just responsible for it. Because I see my arrogance. I see it like all the time. Not necessarily every day, but I see it on a regular basis. It's amazing to get that. It's just amazing for me to get my arrogance, because it's like, wow, you know, maybe I actually could do some things that my arrogance normally would stop me from, so that I actually get that done and actually makes progress, and I can, you know, stop being such a snob for once. And I see my laziness and how I don't really want to work through lunch, and I don't really want to have to look at my books, and I don't really want to have to make those calls. I don't really want to have to do that live stream and talk about this thing. You know, I notice how like bored I'll get once I've done something like 5 times. It's like, okay, I did it 5 times. I'm done. Can we just move on? Can someone else take this on? Because they do it. I'm not gonna do this. It's too much of a grind. Like it's just amazing to see that in myself. It's amazing to see my bored, lazy, arrogant self, and how much that part of me, or that in me, if you will, being that way, stops me in my life. Just amazing. But you know what's interesting about this, and this is the point I was kind of making with those stories earlier. I can see it. I see the laziness. I see the arrogance. I see the boredom. And when I see it, and I see the relationship that laziness, arrogance, boredom has to my no results, or my lack of progress, or my my issues, my illnesses in the business or in my life, I'm like, wait a second, this actually caused that. It stops me. These things aren't just like, oh, I'm just lazy, so what? That's just the way I am. Or I'm just, I could be arrogant, no big deal. Or I get bored sometimes, so what? No, it's like those things actually, that's like the dead cow. That's like the brick wall. That's the barrier. That's the thing that stops me. Not like bad that I'm boring or I'm bored, or bad that I'm arrogant. Not like I got to beat myself up for that. But it's like I can actually get that in me, or that me being that way stopped me from something. It's actually robbing me of the very results that I dream of, that I'm after, that I wish I could have. It's like, that is enlightening. That is amazing. Like, that's exciting actually, in a way, because it's like, wow, if that's really what's stopping me, like maybe I should do something about that. Maybe I should go around the dead cow rather than continuing to ram my head into it and then complain about the transmission, or I need a bigger car with bigger tires or something like that. So that's why, if you will, that's why we need to know this stuff. We need to know it. Your client needs to get it, and you need to give it to your client, because they're not going to be responsible for it. They're going to be blind to it. They're not going to get this. You need to deliver this to them, not like tell them, but you need to facilitate them getting this. Because if they don't get it from you, they ain't never going to get it. And they will be banging their head into that same brick wall for the rest of their life, again and again and again and again, and then they die. And they're going to call that a life, or you're going to call that a life. You're going to call that somebody who's not coachable or not ready to change. Who are you kidding? That is an abomination of the coaching experience. Talking about the blind leading the blind. It's like, if you don't look at and are responsible for yourself in your relationship to actually sharing with your clients and making sure that and facilitating at least what's actually stopping them, like, you need to get that handled. You've got to make sure that you are in a position to actually take responsibility for what it is that stops you in this process with your client before you expect to get it with them. It's huge to get that. And you know what mine are, among other things: fear and being afraid of rejection, as all sorts of other things for me. But it's like, I can get those things and they don't stop me with a result that I'm committed to. Net, especially if it's ongoing. It's like an ongoing issue for me, because me and my coach are going to handle it. We're going to see what those things are. So the other piece here is that your client is hiding what stops them. Maybe not consciously, but they are hiding it. Okay. Hiding it from themselves, maybe hiding it from you, hiding it from other people in their life. They're playing this publicity campaign, so to speak, this PR campaign with themselves and others, trying to convince themselves and others, kind of sell them their story about the real reason why things aren't working. We had a student who is working, who's actually was our guinea pig in the last couple of weeks in immersion training. Kind of her story that she was attempting to kind of enroll us in, to sell us on, was, I'm so busy, I'm overwhelmed, I can't prioritize this stuff. It's just too much, right? Total achiever, likely story, right? Not at all what's stopping her, but she has everybody convinced. It's like everybody's bought into that. She bought into it, because she's got this great way of covering up what's actually stopping her, right? If that was stopping her, she would have handled that a long time ago. She's actually an expert in those areas. But your client is going to try to cover these things up in so many ways, and they're usually very good at this. They're better at covering up what stops them than you are at coaching. Okay? Most of the time, like 99% of the time, they're better than this. Why can I say that? Because they've been doing this all their life. You've only been coaching for a decade or 5 years or 5 months or 5 days, right? You are nowhere near the expert that they are at their act that they learned when they were like 6.5 or 16 or whatever. Like, they got that down pat. They've been practicing that forever. Okay. So don't think that you're just going to like get it and they're going to just get it and break through it without like a serious conversation. Okay. That's why we have an entire like hour and a half plus training on the flow charted decision points for a paint by numbers process to make sure you actually can help somebody do this, right? It takes something, it takes some intentionality there. And the first time you do this, it might be a half-hour conversation or more. And then you got some breakthroughs. And usually it takes a little additional education on top of that facilitated coaching conversation as well, that little inquiry. But there are common cover-ups that your clients will use. And whatever they first share that they say stop them, like if you ask them, hey, why didn't you do that? What stopped you from getting this done? What stopped you from following through? Whatever they share is always the cover-up. It's just always a cover-up. It's never what really stopped them, okay? Because again, the thing that's on the tip of their tongue meets the needs of their ego, or it's some other drive for them that has them knee-jerk say, oh, it's this other thing. Not, and they already had that ready. They were already going to tell you that, okay? And so since they were already going to tell you that, they already knew that, they already would have handled it. They probably did handle it, and they still are stopped. Does that make sense? If you fix something that you think is why you're not getting a result, and the thing you fix is fixed, like you know it's fixed, and you're still not getting the result, that thing isn't the reason why you didn't get the result. There's something else, right? You need to be a better detective than that. So there's 4 common cover-ups. I'm just going to share these with you. Number 1 is urgency. This is a very, very common one. Like, oh, I'm so busy. I've got, I had to do this instead. I just wasn't able to get it done, right? Second one is scarcity. Like I didn't have enough resources. I didn't have enough time. I didn't have enough money. I'm just like, I'm not good enough. It's like, I tried, but I couldn't, that kind of thing. Scarcity. Third is mistakes. I shouldn't have committed to that. I just overcommitted. I didn't realize I couldn't really do that. That kind of thing. It's like, it ends up being like an excuse, right? Like, oh, I just made a mistake. I was wrong. And then the fourth one, this is really the most insidious one. It's not necessarily the most common, but it definitely does come up, and you're going to see this with clients. And that is lies and or attitude. So they'll just simply, like, lying is what, is they're using this lying thing to cover up what's really stopping them, right? They'll make something up, okay? Now, again, they might be lying to themselves too. It might not be like malicious, but it's like a lie, right? They didn't tell the truth. Or what we would call attitude, which is like getting angry at you. Like, hey, why, I'll get it done. Stop bothering me. Or like being just that kind of thing. It's like some kind of attitude where they just start pushing back at you and they just don't want to deal with it. I remember a client, I did not do a great accountability coaching job with this client. A client that I worked with first couple trainings that we did, and he was not being accountable at all. And I was really rigorous with him. And I was like, what had you not do this? What stopped you? And he just kept pushing back, like, forget it. I'll just, I apologize. I was late. Sorry. I didn't follow through, but, I'm going to get a handle. I'll take care of this. I'm going to get a handle, just stop bothering me. And I kept pushing and pushing and pushing for it. And eventually he just lost it. And but here's the thing, all that attitude, all that anger, all that pushback, it protected him from actually breaking through what stopped him. And still to this day, there's a good chance that he's still stopped by the very things that he protected himself. He guarded with his jerk attitude, with his anger, with his accusations, with his ugliness with me. And so, like, I managed the session as the best I could. I probably could have done a much better job with him, but he ended up losing as a result of that attitude. So urgency, scarcity, mistakes, lies, and attitude, none of this stuff stops people, but it does cover up what actually does stop them. Hope that makes sense. These cover-ups are never what stops somebody. Urgency never stopped anybody from producing a result. Scarcity never stopped anybody. Like scarcity, I mean scarcity, like not like real, actually, like they actually didn't have the money. They actually didn't like have the means to do it. I mean, I'm not talking about crazy stuff like that. Like we know where to draw the line on that, but like being in scarcity never stopped anybody from producing a result. Making a mistake doesn't stop people from producing results. If you haven't noticed, some of the people who produce the most results, the biggest results in humanity, they make the most mistakes also. You know, I mean, if mistakes actually stop people from producing results, it would be the opposite, right? But mistakes, some people like celebrate mistake. I mean, it's not like great, but it doesn't stop you. It's maybe a sign that you're probably going to make progress eventually if you continue down that road. And then again, lies, you know, people, you know, BSing people or having an attitude never stopped them from getting a result. It just covers the stuff up that actually stopped them. Now, I'm going to share with you now. These are the secrets. These are 6. I mean, some of them are secret, some of them probably aren't. 6 secret things that stop your clients. And this is it. Like, there's nothing else that stops your clients that's outside of these 6 categories. Now, these are categories. They're not like exact things. There are many different items that you might follow or discover inside each of these categories, right? But these categories will help you get the scent. It'll help you kind of detect what it might be based upon what's going on as well, and what you can gather in your inquiry with your client. So, number 1, this is almost the universal one, or one of the most common, I would say. First thing that stops your client from getting a result, from following through, from taking action, procrastination, whatever, conversations. Conversations. I know it sounds odd, right? Just like, what do you mean conversations ever stopped anybody? Sticks and stones, right? No, it's just conversations. So urgency doesn't stop people, but a conversation that sounds like urgency might. Scarcity never stopped people, but a conversation that sounds like scarcity might stop somebody. So conversations like, I'll do it later, or that's not really that important, right? Like there's all sorts of little dinky conversations, like 1 sentence, 2 sentences, 3 words. I'll do it later. It's 4 words. And if it wasn't for that, if not for that conversation, that would have gotten done. Can you think of something in your life that you missed out on, or where you got stopped and you never got back to it? Maybe like a key relationship you could have gone after, made a connection with, or maybe like a key action to actually pursue a particular opportunity, or a key like thing that you could have done to complete a piece of work that you were working on would have really made a difference at this point in your life. But you just said something maybe multiple times because it kept coming up. I need to do this. I need to do this. And then you said a couple things. You said something over and over again. You never got around to it. And your life like could have been completely different had you just not said that one thing. That is how devastating it is when you get how 3 or 4 or 6 little words called a conversation actually kept you from what your life could have been. You could have already had it all, but you just had this conversation instead. It's devastating when it's just those little considerations, those reasons why, those conversations that we tell ourselves or others or both could have made all the difference. Now, might be kind of, depressing to hear that, right? Looking back 12 years, like, hey, thanks, Jeff. Too late now, right? But here's the thing. Like, if you actually identify what that conversation is, I mean, it's not like that conversation isn't stopping you from other things in your life right now, or maybe that same thing. There's a client I work with on a regular basis, and they like really always wanted to make it big in show business. And they were always like on Broadway productions and things, like just right at the precipice of like being able to make it big, like make it so they could have their whole life be in showbiz, right? And there were these hotshot, I mean, like names, if I mentioned them, if I can remember them, you would know the name, right? If you know anything about Broadway and this kind of performance stuff, acting and plays, etc. These people were the biggest names in those areas. And it's like, you could meet this person. This person wants to work with you, etc. And she had this conversation called, I'm not ready. And so she didn't call him. And then 6 months went by. And then she shifted to a conversation. It's like, I'm embarrassed not to call him now, you know? And then a couple more years, and it's like, I really should have called him. It's too late now, right? It's odd how those conversations, like they'll change, but it's still just a conversation. You know, it's like the individual who yesterday died of lung cancer, right? Their kid, their son tried to save them 20 years ago by asking them to quit, begging them to quit. And their conversation was at that point, I got plenty of time to quit. I'll do it. I'll quit. I promise I'll quit. I'm going to do it later because, you know, I got years ahead of me before I really have to quit. Right. And then there was a point in that next 15 years where it went from I'll do it later, I still got time, to, you guessed it, it's too late now. Why bother now? I'm old. Forget it. I'm going to die of what I'm going to die of. Or they got diagnosed at that point. Too late now. So I've got plenty of time. I'll do it later turns into too late now, et cetera, right? So we can, that's the easy thing about these conversations, and the easy way we can continue to stop ourselves. All we got to do is like make a little adjustment to make the conversation fit our rationalization today. And there it is. We can keep stopping ourselves with 7 little words. Too late now. I'll do it later. I'll get to it tomorrow. They're not ready. I'm not ready. I'm embarrassed. Whatever your version of that is. The fact is, who cares? Who cares what those words are? Who cares the rationalization? It's all the same. It's all the same to you. It's the same result, which is you miss out. You lost. You failed. You didn't get the conversation to happen. You didn't make the connection. You didn't get the job. You didn't create that relationship. You didn't marry that person. Whatever your version of that is, whatever your client's version of that is. Who cares what the conversation is? It's just a conversation. That's all it is. We treat our conversations sometimes like they're real, still just a conversation, right? So that's the first thing that stops your client all the time. Almost always is a conversation to identify, and sometimes it is the sole factor. It is literally nothing else is stopping them. It's just one conversation. If you could just identify what that conversation is, and they get, it's not just know that they said it, but know that that actually became their brick wall. They can identify it as the impediment, as the stop for them. Totally different life. They could literally get their life from that one conversation. And then we're bitching about a $250 a month coaching fee, right? Come on. Like that one conversation, they get it, get their whole life from that. Their whole life, if they live from that distinction of breaking through that. Second thing that stops your coaching client: being reasonable or justified. Being reasonable or justified. So now this is, it's kind of like a rationalization maybe to some extent, but just think of it this way, like being like super hyper logical, connecting the dots, like the logical explanation, the justification, not like that is that what they committed to, they could not have done, but just like, it just wasn't reasonable to do it. It's just not like I'm justified in not doing it, right? And they use that to destroy their entire relationship, or wreck the possibility in their business, or massively limit their income, or wreck their health, or whatever their version of that is that they're stopped from. Reasonable, justified, every single dumbass thing that humans have done from the beginning of time has been justifiable, right? It's been reasonable. There's been reason behind it. Now, it might be fallacious reasoning, right? It's like the logical fallacies, possible, but it's still reasonable. They still had like they could be reasonable about it, feel like justified and logical about it, and still not do it, still not follow through. Third reason why, or third thing that stops your client is selfishness. Just being selfish. It's like, I don't want to. I don't feel like it. That doesn't work for me. It's not my thing. That kind of thing. It's just selfishness. Like, there are some people where their selfishness, like the world revolves around them, right? And I know this very well. Like, I'm extremely selfish. It's just like I'm probably in the 90th percentile or so of selfish people. But there's people on earth that their selfishness, they will never be responsible for it. They will never get their selfishness. They will never actually see it as a barrier to them living the life that they could have lived, right? The only difference between me and them, it's like I actually saw it a couple times and broke through it enough to get to where I am now. And probably I got places where I could connect the dots where that actually is still stopping me, right? Now that I bring it up, now that I actually talk about it, my coach should be listening to this, right? So just being selfish. Their selfishness stops them. And here's the thing, again, these kind of things I'm talking about, they are not going to be things that, like, you're not going to ask your client, what stopped you from making your phone calls? Oh, my selfishness. Like, they're not going to say that, right? Or, oh, I'm being too reasonable, or I'm being justified, or it was just a conversation I had. They're never going to tell you that, right? They will cover those things up with urgency and scarcity and mistakes and lies and attitude. That's what they're going to tell you. Then your job as the coach is to get to what I'm listing here, which of these, if not a combination of them, actually stop them. That's your job. Okay, so selfish. That's number 3. Number 4, this is of 6, so we're almost there. Number 4, being their circumstances, or being your circumstances. It's like, this is kind of like being a victim of circumstance, if you will, but like blaming the circumstance. I didn't have time. I didn't get the money. These people didn't help me. It's like, those kind of stories, if you will. Very, very common, being your circumstance, especially nowadays where most people are so externally focused. They have an external frame of reference, even if they're not extroverts. And so everything around them, they like are expert in. They're not expert as what's going on with them, because they missed out on their coaching, but they know the government is taxing them too much, or there's too many, there's too many laws or regulations, or there's too much competition, or there's too many people that like treat people a certain way, or women are like this, or men are like this, or people are like this, or money's like this. You get the idea. Like, they'll tell you all the reasons why not, and a lot of times it's just them being their circumstance. They'll explain the circumstance, and that becomes the reason why not. Now, usually that falls into urgency, scarcity, mistakes, lies, and attitude, right? But they're just really just being their circumstance. But like, they are who they be reflects the circumstance, right? Like, this is the way competition is, so I'm just going to be a victim of that. I'm just going to be like a grunt that's in that, mud, rather than rising above it in that industry. Or, hey, men are like this. That's why I can never find a good one. And they stay stuck in living in that reality. Like, this is just the way they are. This is just the way they are, rather than rising above that to find one who's an exception, let's say, and on and on and on. So being their circumstances. My clients on a regular basis, they will tell me all the things they know that are the reasons why they haven't produced the results that they totally could have produced, right? That's being your circumstances. Usually they're experts on their circumstances. And so they be that. Now, nothing wrong with being an expert on the way the landscapes, and it's actually probably good to be an expert on that to some extent. But to be it, to reflect it, to be a part of it, is never to overcome it, right? If you want to really lead, you've got to become more than the culture around you. If you want to actually produce a result in an area where it's challenging to produce that result, you've got to become more than just that landscape, what that landscape allows. got to kind of break those rules, if you will. You got to think outside the box, if you will. That box, it's just circumstances. It's really not a box. It's just our being that way, the way that those circumstances would kind of like dictate. So that's number 4, being your circumstances. Number 5, being how you feel, right? I just didn't feel like it. I was scared. I was worried. I was being lazy that day. It's like that can totally stop somebody, right? If you're being how you feel, you get what I mean? Like if like you could feel scared and still like have courage to do something. You could feel lazy but still like get off your butt and do it. Like that can happen, right? Because you're not being how you feel. You're being someone more than just your feelings. We don't always feel like doing something. We don't always have the mindset that is commensurate with what it takes to do it, right? But we can still do it. However, if you be that way, it's like I'm being lazy, or I'm feeling lazy, and I'm going to be lazy by actually acting it out and like literally take on the physics of laziness. Okay, well then you're just being how you feel. Like I'm scared and I'm going to be that way. I'm going to be scared. I'm going to hold back. I'm going to miss out. I'm going to not take the action. I'm not going to have any courage, right? It's like the feelings aren't what stops us. It's the being that stops us. But the being can also like the feelings kind of like become the, how would I put this? They are the epitome of the way you be. You be lazy, not feel lazy. You be fear. You don't just feel it. You be frustrated, not just feeling it. And when you be that way, then you're dead. Can't be that way and produce results in that area where you're stopped right now. Just not going to happen. So being how you feel. Sometimes the coaching is just, hey, you got to stop being how you feel. You need to be more than your feelings today. All right. And finally, number 6, we made it. The 6th thing that stops your coaching client from anything and everything that they've ever needed to do or become in their life. And this is kind of a catch-all. This one covers a lot of ground. Being wrong, blaming, or pettiness. Okay, being wrong, blaming, or pettiness. So making themselves wrong, for instance, like, okay, there's just something wrong with me. I just can't do it, that kind of thing. Blaming others, like this is almost like being your circumstances, right? Like you made me not follow through. Like my mother's the reason why I can't be the way I really want to be. This is another story that I've heard recently from a client. Or my ex-wife is why I can't, be trusting, or, all that kind of stuff. Or pettiness, like I didn't do it because they said this, right? Or I'm not gonna have any integrity around that because they're a jerk, right? Just being petty, right? So being wrong, like blaming yourself, blaming others, or pettiness, which is kind of some amalgamation of blame or being righteous or something like that, where you're just going to use that something that really is not that big a deal, but you're going to put that above your word to destroy your relationship, to destroy your integrity, destroy all your power, just so you can be right about that, just so you can put that person in their place, just so you can feel good about yourself, that kind of thing, right? Pettiness. It's kind of like being how you feel in a way, but pettiness is kind of like its own separate thing. We do see, at least in other people a lot of times, their pettiness that stops them from actually producing a result. Have you not? It's not hard to see a lot of times. Here's where it's hard to see in ourselves. It's hard for our clients to see it in themselves. If only they could, they might actually have the possibility of doing something about it. By the way, that doesn't mean that they're never going to be petty, right? Or they're never going to be reasonable or selfish or have these conversations. But then at least they're free to choose as to whether those things, those 6 things that we just listed, actually stop them from producing the result or taking the action or being who they are committed to be. That's the miracle in this. It's actually identifying those things, helping your client to identify those things, or working with them in inquiry through which they do identify one of those or several of those things. and then they actually could be responsible for the first time in a long time or their entire life for one of these things actually stopping them. So what's stopping you out of these things, do you think, commonly? Really look for the ones that you don't agree with, or that you don't think are real, or that you can't see. The ones that you see, they probably don't even stop you. The ones that you're like, I'm never selfish, or it's like, those are the ones that probably are there, or at least may stop you, even if it's once in a blue moon. Really, really consider the possibility that some of these things that you don't even get stop you actually do stop you in areas where you really do care about the results, where you really are committed to more than what you're experiencing or doing or creating or being in your life right now. Like, you could have it all if not for that. And yet you'll cover that up. Like I said before, steam will come out of your ears before your head will turn around 360 like The Exorcist, before you actually take responsibility for that, before you actually get that that's what stops you. And it's the same for your client. That's why we need to coach our clients on this. You don't have to coach your client on everything. They could read a personal growth book and a lot of times have all sorts of cool breakthroughs. But these things that really stop them, they ain't going to read that in a book. Like, nobody's reading this in a book. Like, I literally don't think there's anything in books that are like this kind of stuff, because nobody would read it. If they are, I'm sure somebody wrote it somewhere, but it's never, ever, ever sold that many books, right? Because nobody would check into that. Nobody wants to get into that. Nobody wants that. That's why you, as their coach, need to deliver it to them, what they don't want, so they can actually get what's possible and they can get what they really want. And you're the only one who could do it, because you're the only one who they might actually listen to, who they might actually answer questions for, because they paid, right? They committed. They look up to you as the coach. You've done all the groundwork to get to this point where you actually could cause the breakthrough. Like, what are you waiting for? All there is just breaking through this BS, the urgency, scarcity, mistakes, lies, and attitude, and then get to one of these 6 things: conversations, reasonable or justified, selfish, being their circumstances, being how they feel, or being wrong or blaming or pettiness. It's just one of those things. If that ain't that complicated, it's not rocket science. Just take somebody who really cares, who has enough rapport, who they're not just going to hang up on, or some momentum to the point where they're actually going to get it and have the breakthrough. Because on the other side, they're going to love you for it. They're going to hate you until that point, though. They will hate your guts throughout this entire conversation until they get the breakthrough. And then they're like, oh, wow. Now, there are 6 exceptional people that'll love you all the way through, but don't expect that. Don't expect that. Because, I mean, if that's what you're doing the coaching for, then once again, like, you're not a very powerful coach, because you're stopped. You're stopped by your selfishness, or by your conversation that they have to love me or like me all the time, or your fear being how you feel, right? That part is stopping you. Get it? This doesn't make sense. Let me know. I mean, hit me up in the comments. Like, I'll look at them. BS is important to shovel out of the way so client can have breakthroughs. Thanks for that, Joe. Yeah, there's shit in the way, and we got to get it out of the way, right? And the first shit in the way would be the cover up that they have, their go-to, their excuse, if you want to call it that. And the second shit in the way is the stuff that actually got in the way that they didn't even realize or know about or take responsibility for until this conversation right here in this coaching session. I mean, man, talking about a miracle. That's what you are for your client. If you can do this, you're like the miracle worker. Like where else are you going to get that? I mean, I don't know where else you're going to get that. I mean, maybe you go to church, you get a miracle there, but other than that, where else are you going to get it? You're going to get it at school. You're going to get it with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers. Maybe once in a blue moon, maybe there's that one teacher, that one friend, right? That's the exception that proves the rule. They're not responsible for that. It's not their job to cause that breakthrough. It's yours. You're the coach, not them, not these other people in their life. By the way, those other people will commiserate with them on their cover up and pat them on the back and support them. That's why they're their friends, right? They commiserate on their pettiness and their whining and all that kind of stuff, right? Their excuses. They like put up with that stuff. That's why they accept them as friends, because the people that don't, they're not going to be friends for very long, right? those friends may work against you to some extent because, hey, all my friends say that this is not it, that like I have no reason, it's like nothing's stopping me and I just didn't get the results. Sorry. My friends say that. My friends like, why aren't you? What's wrong with you, Mr. Coach or Mrs. Coach? That could be a problem, right? But as a powerful enough coach, if you can break through that in a session, then their friends, although there might be still commiserating there, they will not let their friends step over this anymore. They're going to take responsibility for this, and they're going to talk to those friends and say, you know what? That excuse I was giving, that was just an excuse. This is what was really stopping me. And now I can, for once in my life, be honest about it, be responsible for it, and have a breakthrough in it. And I'm sorry that I played that game with you, because that is not the friend that I could have been to you. And, I'm committed to more for myself than just that. And again, and you and all the people that they could have that conversation with. That's a different life for them now. Now they might have different friends because those friends like, okay, he's not going to let me off the hook anymore for my stuff, right? But there are always people around you that will support you in whatever your level of standards are. If your level of standards are like really low, have no integrity, can't be your word, excuses, victimhood, all that, there's plenty of people in the world that will support that. You will find that level of friend, right? And they will be like glue stuck to you for the rest of your life. Or you'll have these like mediocre standards, like enough to get by, right? That is like the other day I was in a training and they said, we're going to put that on your tombstone. You got this tombstone here, and it says on the tombstone, John Smith or Sally, whatever your name is, right? Got by. That's what they're going to put on your tombstone, because that's that mediocre standard, right? It's like, hey, we're getting by. We're okay. It's just it's enough. We're all right. You're doing okay. It's good enough. Like, take it easy, man. Like, let's take a spa day. Forget about that. Don't worry about it. Or you could have those mega high standards, right? It's like, I want it all. I'm going after it all. This is, I'm going to have this amazing relationship, this amazing health, this amazing finances, this amazing life, this amazing career, this amazing impact on the world, amazing, extraordinary, all that kind of stuff. And you can find friends that are like actually up for that. They're committed to that in their life. They're not going to take less than that for you either. You want them in your mastermind, right? You can have that level of friend. So you will find friends and create a family that is at any of those levels, and probably every level in between, I'm sure. And they will commiserate with you on whatever level you're committed to. Now, some people in our families, maybe they're going to be on low levels, right? You can still love them. You can still appreciate who they are. You can still treat them like a human being, right? But you get to pick your peers. You get to pick the people around you. Your client gets to pick them as well. And your client, whatever level they're at, they're going to have peer groups that support that. I guarantee you that. Okay? So just be aware of that is not going to be helpful to you. You're going to have to break through that, and you're going to have to be that much stronger as an accountability coach to figure out how to keep the relationship and at the same time break through the things that they were using to get in the way of what's really stopping them, and actually have them take responsibility for that. And like in one session, you got to do that if you're going to be strong. So accountability coaches, Master Coach University, Accountability Immersion Training, that's what we're up to. That's what we're committed to. And this next week, this is going to be the death blow for what stops you. We're going to start working together on taking responsibility for those things so that you do not let that get in your way. And if you've got a partner in accountability immersion training or somebody in your team, you've been coaching them and they're not following through, they're not playing full out, they're not being unstoppable, they're being irresponsible for it. Like, this is your wake-up call. This next week is the death blow week. This is the week where we strike the final blow for freedom for them and for you, because look, you're responsible that's going on if you're coaching them, for sure. Right? Like, and I'm not saying like responsible, like their results or like that's all up to you. Of course not. But just consider your responsibility in the matter of that conversation with them that could have turned it around. That's you. So I'm going to be holding you accountable next week, not just them. I mean, they're accountable too, no doubt. Right? But you're their coach. Like they deserve more. They deserve this this level of caring, commitment, intensity, rigor, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And if you're not getting that, or that's a yeah, but for you, or you got resistance to that, then put it in the chat. Let's get it handled now. Like next training session, I'm not even going to leave the training if that's what I'm hearing. We got to get it handled. Okay, so those are the 6 things that stop your clients. Finally, and this came up in the last training session. We were working on that step 1 with a few of you. That sometimes your client will give it like they'll give it the college try, or they won't quite complete something, or they forgot. They're like, there's all these different things, like circumstantial things that are going on around them just not having followed through on what they committed to. Okay. And it's important. I don't even think this is really that important, really, but it is a distinction that will, I think, help you navigate the de facto issues and conversations that revolve around the commitments that they're making and the accountability that you provide. Okay, so this is like tertiary to the main event. The main event is what we just talked about, especially in step 1. But these are things that you can consider, and just understand that as we talk about these things, don't think that these things are reasons why not. They're things that stop them, that they're the main event. You want to separate the circumstances in the story from what actually the cover up and the cause really is. And I think that identifying these things can help you appreciate what's going on with your client, but also get where you might get tripped up by something your client brought up because it's a likely story. So this distinction is what I call levels of incomplete. There's like different, like we just talked about, different levels of peer group you might have in your life. These are like levels of incompleteness, if you will. Because look, if you're holding your client accountable for something, they're incomplete, right? They didn't finish it. And so there's different levels to that we can appreciate. So, and I'm going to take them from the least incomplete, the level that is the level that's, like just a sliver beneath actually having gotten it done, to the most incomplete, like they're not even close to complete. Okay. So, and obviously, like if they're just barely making it, like they're almost complete, like that's a different accountability conversation maybe than somebody who just completely blew it off. Does that make sense? Just reality wise, like this is something that it's good to know and be aware of, to kind of calibrate our level of intensity and our level of rigor with the client, depending on what their standards are as well, and where they are in the process of working with you. So first, level 1 of incomplete, this is practically complete, basically. Level 1 is that they were unstoppable and they had integrity around their word. Like they were in communication, they were letting you know where they were, and they were really playing the game full out. Like you could tell they were unstoppable and they were in communication with you. High level of integrity, right? But they just lost the game. They played full out, everything they could to get the result and do the action, but they just didn't quite pull it off, okay? That individual, if that's the case, they're in constant communication with you. This is where I am. I'm really committed to doing this. I don't know if I'm going to get it done. All that kind of stuff. And they're unstoppable the whole time. They're like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, and they're doing whatever it takes, and they're breaking through, and they're dealing with everything that they got to deal with. Really, truly unstoppable, right? Like live or die kind of unstoppability. But they still didn't get it done. That client is what I call a unicorn. That is a unicorn, okay? You will never, basically, for lack of a perfection here, you will just like never meet that person, okay? Maybe if they're in a really heavy duty accountability program where they're just like flying off the wall, they're in like some cult or something, like, okay, yeah, you got somebody like that, for a couple sessions, right? But no, you're not going to meet that. Your coaching clients probably are not going to be level 1 of incomplete. All right. Totally unstoppable, total integrity, just didn't get it done. Okay. If that's the case, like, I don't know. I don't know how much accountability I'd offer them. Just like, because nothing really stopped. Well, I'm sure something still stopped them potentially. But just like, that's just like a positive conversation. It's like, okay, let's actually look at like, what does it take to get that one last little breath of air so you could have gotten this done, right? That's it. A lot of times they really literally couldn't have got it done, right? But they were unstoppable and they had integrity around it. Okay. Unicorns. Okay. Let's see. Joe says, yep, step one, cover up needs to not be swallowed by the coach, as well as intensely demonstrated as a cover up to the client. It can be a struggle and stressful for some and take the easy way out. Yeah. I mean, this is not easy, right? It's not easy for your client. It's for a lot of us. It's not easy for the coach either. Very good points. You just can't, but you can't let them off the hook, or else it's over. It's over for you. It's over for them. It's over that coaching relationship in terms of what's possible. Okay, so that's level 1 of incomplete, the unicorn level. All right. Level 2 of incomplete is they had integrity, but they weren't unstoppable. Like they were in communication with you. They were really being their word, doing the best they could to honor their word, all that. But they just weren't unstoppable. They were being lackadaisical. They weren't playing full out. Something about them was having them not be unstoppable, or they were unstoppable, but they were not in communication with you. Like they didn't have integrity. They weren't honoring their word. And we get a lot of these, like people that are like really like go-getters, are like really trying to get it done, but like you don't even know what's going on as the coach. Like they're not letting you know they may not get it done, or they're working through this, or like they're not even talking to you about that. No integrity, even if they were unstoppable, didn't get it done. Or they had integrity. They're like talking to you about it the whole time. They were really in communication. They were trying to get your support, but you could tell they weren't being unstoppable, or they could tell they weren't being unstoppable. That's level 2. Okay. So it's one or the other. They were missing one of those key fabrics, if you will, of actually being their word and having integrity, etc. If that's the case, then you just want to find out what had them not be whichever one they weren't being. If they weren't in communication, what had them not? If they weren't unstoppable, what had them not? And cover up in the cause around that. Third level, this is, again, we're getting more intense, more incomplete as we go. Third level of incomplete, they started they started their journey, but they quit. And they were both out of communication about it and not unstoppable with it, right? So they got into action, right? They actually did something. They started like the project, or they started to make the calls. But they were nowhere near complete, right? They got stopped at some point. They were clearly not unstoppable, and you didn't even know about it. Like no integrity in the matter. Because look, if they got stopped and they had talked to you, you would have turned them around and set them right back. It would have been a completely different situation. But they got stopped. It was a secret. That's it. We're unstoppable. So basically both. Like in level 2, they either didn't have integrity or they weren't unstoppable. In level 3, it's like they were really both. They neither did they have integrity, nor were they unstoppable. Okay, they were missing both of those pieces. Okay, really a breach in their integrity, really a breach in their word. They broke their word, and they weren't even like in communication with you. You couldn't even have helped them if you wanted to. Okay. You're not going to babysit them all day. So that is level 3. They started, but they quit, and both, they lack of integrity, lack of unstoppability. They really are stopped in being their word and with their integrity and with whatever it is that they promised. All right, level 4 level 4 incomplete, if you will, even more incomplete now. Going higher level incomplete, if you will. They intended to start, but they didn't start. So they had the intention, they committed, they were actually committed to it, but they never even got started with it. They truly got stopped before they even started. You get a lot of clients who are in this ballpark as well. A lot of clients who start but don't finish, a lot of clients who don't even start, but they really wanted to start, right? So once again, lack of integrity and unstoppability there, obviously, but they and again, they wanted to do this. Like they really actually were committed to it. They had the intention there, started with the intention, and never even got in the court. Okay, plenty of clients like that. There's an egregious breach of their integrity and their word, and at the same time, like they're stopped with something. They're not just maliciously deciding not to, but like something's going on. They're not being responsible for it. And we got to check that out. We got to find out what's going on. And then again, cover up and cause. We do that process with them. Okay. Finally, final level is the 5 levels is the 5th level. Most egregious breach, right? The worst level of incomplete, the most incomplete out of everything, even more incomplete than they didn't even start, but they had the intention, is they forgot, or they just decided not, why bother, right? They really didn't have the intention to even do it. I mean, maybe initially they had the intention, but they shifted to, nah, they really consciously decided not to do it. Or conscious or unconscious, oh, I didn't even know what I committed to. I forgot about that commitment. Like that kind of thing. These are just as egregious. And you might think, well, hey, they forgot, that's horrible. If they forgot, that's the low level that they look at their word through. They look at their word at such a low level that they don't even remember it. Like that same person, you borrow $5 from them, they will remember that $5 till the day you will come back to them on their deathbed and they're like, you owe me $5. I remember you owe me $5, right? But they made some commitment to their coach on something that's really challenging for them to get done. They'll forget that instantly. Like, don't tell me that it's just like somebody's forgetful. Yes, sometimes people do have memory problems. That's fair, right? But when there's something that that's really important to them, something that they actually are honoring their word, they have integrity around, usually they will remember. Or if they're really forgetful, they'll like commit to it. And because they really are committed, they like write it down. They put up together reminders. They tell other people, right? They like set the game up. So it's not like this I forgot thing. Make sense? So worst, most egregious level of incomplete. I forgot. I just decided against it, blew it off completely, didn't even tell you. I quit and forgot to tell you, so to speak, or I forget. I quit and decided not to tell you about it. Okay, make sense? All right, so that's the most egregious. Least is they were unstoppable, they had integrity, they just lost the game, played full out. Level 2, they were one or the other. They either weren't unstoppable, they didn't have integrity. They didn't quite make it because of that. Level 3, getting worse, if you will, getting more intense. They started, but they quit, and they had both a lack of integrity and a lack of being unstoppable. Level 4, they intended to start, but they didn't. They really, really were committed. They had intention to be their word, did not happen. And then finally, didn't even have the intention, forgot, decided, forget it, not for me. I gave my word, but screw that. Who cares? My word isn't worth anything. That kind of thing. No integrity in that. Totally stop. Not at all unstoppable. Complete egregious lack of, any commitment to anything, basically. Weren't really even committed to it, if you will, if you want to put it that way. Or maybe they were initially committed when you were there, and then as soon as you went away, their integrity just evaporated, So if somebody's a number 5, I'm going to be a lot more intense about that, because that's a much more obvious and egregious breach than if somebody's like a number 2, right? They really had the intention. They started the journey. They just didn't make it, and they weren't in communication or something like that, right? It's a tiny little thing. We can work together on that as partners, but if they're just blowing it off, it's I'm look, we're going to keep this coaching relationship going. You got to get that you're just completely blowing off your word. You have no integrity. You're not unstoppable. You're not even communicating with me about it. You're not going to get any results in this. I'm just wasting my time with you. But somebody who's totally unstoppable, they just needed being more communication. Just hey, will you communicate with it? Great. Okay, we're going to get this handled. Lovely. What stopped you from doing that? Okay, you responsible for that? Then we move on to step 2 and 3, right? That's a whole different thing, right? Now, sometimes people that are totally blowing you off and have an attitude and they're lying and all that stuff, sometimes you can't be as intense with them as you'd like to be because they're so reactivated and they're so emotional and they're got all sorts of other issues that are on layered on top of what actually stops them. So I get that. And also just consider that if you're going to be a powerful accountability coach, at some point, you just got to risk losing that client so you can have one. Like, might as well just like play full out, put the damn coaching relationship at stake so they can have their life. Either that or stop acting like you're committed to that client, because you're not. You're not committed to them. You're just committed to have them liking you or getting your fee that you get from them each month. And it's kind of like a mutual agreement. I'll pay you if you put up with my BS. You're not a coach. You're a paid friend. They got labels for those types of people, the kind of people who, you pay them for their company, if you will. That's you. Now, like, again, by the way, I don't mean that in any kind of, hurtful way. But like, it's the same thing. It's like, if that's stopping you, you're being selfish, right? You're being justified. Like, it's the same thing. Like, if the shoe fits, like, get it and take responsibility for it and turn it around, because it's ruining the power that you have as a coach. It's ruining what the client signed up for. It's making the coaching into an abomination of that word. And we wonder why coaches get a bad rap nowadays. It's like, most coaches are doing this. That is not cool, especially now that you know, right? Maybe some of these coaches didn't even know. I know there were many years where I had no clue about it. And like, I was still not responsible for it. But, then I like woke up because I had great coaches around me that shared this with me. Like, that's my commitment to you. So like, I can share it with you in a way that hopefully I'll provoke something so you'll get it handled. Or if you're like a client, you just want to get this handled for yourself, great. You're not coaching anybody, get this handled for yourself. And let me know what happened. Let me know what kind of life you're leading now, or what kind of breakthrough you had, because that kind of keeps me going. That's it. Those are the 6 things that stop clients: conversation, reasonable, justified, selfish, being your circumstances, being how you feel, or wrong, blame, or pettiness. That's it. And all this other stuff is just like extra that I wanted to add here because we haven't covered it in so many details in the other training elements. So if you are in Accountability Immersion Training, if you're in Master Coach University, then watch that video on step 1 like 5 times. Okay, you're going to get that. Second, make sure that you get this stuff handled for yourself. Talk to your coaches, talk to your partners, have a commitment conversation with them where they're going to, like, you don't expect them to coach you on this stuff, but you actually expect yourself to share it and volunteer it to them. So you get a handle, you're responsible. Okay. For the first time, maybe. Okay. Get that handled and bring it to the training session, next training session. So we all know, and then the jig is up for you. Because once everybody knows, it's like, you can't keep perpetrating that because it ain't a secret anymore. It might look ugly. It might not be pretty, but at least you don't have to dance that dance. At least you don't have to push that funny thing down and try to hide it anymore. Because that's just ugly and weird and ridiculous and nauseating and every other word you could describe. Okay. Now, that said, if you're not in Master Coach University, you're not in accountability training, watch the live streams while they're up, if they still are. We'll be taking them down at the end of training, and really try to integrate this as best you can. And then second, talk to us about, getting trained on this stuff, right? I mean, we'll work with you on these modalities and methodologies if you're not going to go all the way, or if you haven't gone all the way already. Because you bring this to your programs, you bring this to your clients, like weight loss. That's a joke. Finding the love of your life, that's like nothing. I mean, like making $1 million is like, this stuff is chicken feed. It's easy pickings. Once you handle this stuff, this is the hard stuff. So let's get this stuff handled. All right. Yeah. The PDF with the slides video is a great tool to review regularly. Yeah. Thanks you for that, Joe. The PDF just kind of is a memory jogger for what you kind of really, really got into in the multiple viewings of that video. Once you've gone through that video enough, the conversations should be there for you. Then it's just a question of like, when am I going to say this one versus that one? And that flow chart gives you the kind of like, okay, I'm starting here. Now I'm moving here. Now what's next? And you make your decisions based on that. It's a paint by numbers so you can get the flow of things, as we call a flow chart. And then eventually you've done that 10, 20, 30 times, throw it away. Throw it away and just maybe remind yourself every couple weeks, and then every couple months, and then every couple years. And you'll just be an amazing accountability coach from then on. And look, it's never handled. We'll talk about that in another live stream, but at least you're on the court with it. I mean, that's magical. This is where the miracles come from, guys. So use this stuff, and I'll talk to you next week in the Death Blow week for all of us, our clients, and anything that's been stopping us before. Talk to you then.